Welcome back to Unsolicited Advice, brought to you by Toxic Bubblegum. I'm Bubblegum.
I'm Toxic.
And this week we're talking about death.
Yes, and this is our first take of the introduction.
This definitely, we haven't done it. The last take was not interrupted by dogs barking at all.
Of course not. I have a quote.
Yes, you do have a
about
quote.
Death.
I don't know why I'm laughing.
Oh, no.
I just like the way you said it.
You do not immortalize the lost by writing about them. Language buries, but it does not resurrect.
It's John Green in The Fault in Our Stars. Fun times. Happy book.
It's a real nice children with cancer book.
Aren't they always? Which reminds me, it's fun. So I went up to Cleveland Clinic today for my top surgery consultation. And
Happy Pride Month!
Happy Pride Month, by the way. I'm trying to get top surgery. My dad pointed out they have like those flags they have like on like posts or whatever, and they're usually like the 2-part sign. And so it has like the stats for the Cleveland Clinic. So it's like number 1 in this, number 1 in this, and it was like number 1 in Ohio, but then the other side just said cancer. And it was like, that's so bad phrasing, Cleveland Clinic. You could have done better.
Yeah.
But, like, so...
That's setting the bar really low.
And so, like, my dad, like, showed us the building, where it was at, and we were like, that's it, that's the number 1 cancer building, and it's like, oh god, this is so bad. Why would they do that? Anyway, that's how we're starting the episode.
Nice.
Cleveland Clinic is a very good hospital. They do good work. They could use better marketing, it appears.
They could move out of the number 1 cancer building, I guess.
Yeah, they could. In fact, they could make it something else. Like...
That's how I'm always gonna see that building now.
That's how it is. It advertises it right there on front. So yeah, we're talking about death. It's gonna be a happy episode. It's gonna be good.
I'm gonna sneak some other quotes in here, because I had a really tough time picking one.
Went with the sad one.
Yeah. Like, I actually didn't go with the saddest one.
Oh, no.
That's gonna be a fun day.
I thought you're gonna end it. Don't do that. Don't end it on a sad note.
No, I'll end on a motivational one. I had mostly motivational ones, 2 sad ones.
So of
love
course.
John Green. So our parts today are going to be a little bit different. I forgot because I introduced this in the other take that we did.
Right.
Our parts, we're going to go through the importance of death in media, the best and worst death in media, and then we're going to talk a little bit about our own experiences writing with death as a topic.
Right. So sort of a varied but sort of casual way to do it. Trigger warning.
Oh, yeah.
Also for death, because we're going to talk about
and suicide. I'm going to talk about suicide.
I figured I was going to talk about also, so, like, yeah. So, yeah, be prepared. We're gonna talk about dark things.
It's gonna get pretty dark.
But
I'm gonna say it in a fun way.
It won't sound sad. That should be the, tagline for Crazy Ex-Girlfriend.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Too true.
Okay, so yes, part 1. So the importance of death.
I think this is one of those things where it's like, it's really important. I'm gonna get a little bit personal here for the importance of death.
Right.
Because it was something that I struggled with in media more than in real life as a child.
Right.
Because as a kid, I took books. I was gonna say media. It was books. I took books really seriously. As a kid, I had like a really tough time. It's like I knew that there was a difference between reality and books, but books still hit me harder than reality for a long time. So it's one of those things, a lot of my first exposures to the concept of death were through like children's fantasy novels, and that's one of those things, it can really mess you up, so it's good as if you're gonna have stuff like that you handle it in a good way. Right. Especially for your younger audiences, or for people, I'm not even gonna say like younger audiences, but anyone who hasn't had that kind of personal experience with death. Right. Usually a younger audience, not always. Mm-hmm. But it's like, it's a really important thing.
I think it's important for, like, introductory levels of that kind of stuff. The death can't be senseless.
Yeah.
Like, it can't just, I mean, it can't be, like, in a horror movie where people just, like, are dying left and right.
Yeah.
With seemingly no purpose in some cases. Like, obviously, every movie handles it differently and stuff like that. But, I mean, not to point out what I'm going to talk about later, but fucking... goddamn, I'm mad at Joss Whedon. I'm talking about
I love where this is going.
Age of Ultron.
Of course.
Like, the fucking Quicksilver was just absolutely unnecessary.
Right.
It's like, so, like, I feel like if you're writing for a younger audience, you can't have, like, unnecessary death and violence and stuff like that. Like, it doesn't... It's not good, and is usually sort of used as, like, a cheap tactic for shock value, I feel like.
Which, again, like, it's something that is not great for the younger audiences, so if you're writing anything that could be even, like, young adult stuff to an extent,
right,
you have to go about it in a way that's a little bit more cautious than...
Right. You have to be a little more tasteful with it. Like, it's gotta be... You have to put extra thought into making sure that it's well done. Because, like, again, these people, or I guess not everybody, but, like, in general, the younger audience is going to have less of an experience with death.
Yeah.
Especially, like, certain types of it, like, old age and, like, diseases and, like, a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah.
So.
This is where I'm going to get a little bit personal. This is something that carries over to today. I'm one of those people, I have a much harder time with animal death than I do with people death.
Same.
Because people are, like, so-so, but I care about animals.
Right?
I'm one of those people. One of the first... I was reading this kid's book. My mom was reading this kid's series to me, and I was in, like, 1st or 2nd grade, and that was the thing, is my mom would read to me before school, and we had to quit, because my favorite character had a pet wolf who died, and I was too emotionally distraught to go into school that day, because I didn't stop crying for, like, 2 hours. It messed me up really bad. Yeah, and then we didn't read before school for a while anymore.
Oh, we had to stop that.
Because I couldn't get over the death of this. And it was like, I reacted to it more than I had reacted to just about anything else in my life. It was one of those things where it's like, I lost interest in the book series. She eventually got a new pet that I didn't like. I was like, no, there's no replacing this pet. I got, like, really... I don't even remember the series at this point in my life. I just remember the wolf.
Oh, no!
I named a cat after him when I got older.
Oh, which one?
Stormbringer.
Oh.
It was, good wolf, good cat. Traumatizing childhood experience, though. And it was, I also had this really unique, age thing going on with Harry Potter, which I'm gonna talk about briefly. I was a little bit ahead of the curve, when Harry Potter came out.
That's true.
And my parents read to me a lot. So when I was, like, 3, my parents started reading the first Harry Potter book to me. And I started reading them the year after that. I started reading them to myself. And I was like, a huge Harry Potter fan. But those of you who grew up with Harry Potter, those of you who grew up in the same generation that I did but were smarter about it, probably, there's this thing where it's like, you grow as Harry Potter grows. Mm-hmm. But because I was so, Harry Potter's 11 when the books start, and I was 3, so it's like, there was a little bit of a difference, and for the first several books, it was okay. But spoiler alert for Harry Potter, when Sirius Black died in Order of the Phoenix, it really, really got to me, because that book was really hard for me anyway, and this is kind of like what we were talking about last week, because there were a lot of themes that just went over my head, because I was still a kid. I was, like, 9 or whatever when Order 10 when Order of Phoenix came out.
Something like that.
I was really young, and it was, so there were a lot of puberty themes that I just did not get. I didn't understand why everyone was being a jerk, and, like, it just, I didn't get it. But when Sirius Black died, I had a really tough time with it, because I had grown up with these characters, and they felt like part of my family, and it was, like, it was a really real experience to me losing part of my... Because I was still in that mentality that everything was going to turn out okay at the end of the books. And knowing that Sirius wasn't going to be there. And, like, it's one of those... so Order of the Phoenix through to Half-Blood Prince, I was in, like, this weird kind of limbo area because... Sirius Black doesn't die, technically. He gets stupefied behind the veil.
Right.
And so I was, like, in this denial period with Sirius, where it's like, I started to realize maybe things wouldn't be okay, and then Half-Blood Prince came around, and Dumbledore died, and it was like, everything can be bad. Everything's gonna be the worst. And it just... But it's one of those things where it's like, it was handled in a way... that I guess did kind of... and this being said, these are not the first deaths in Harry Potter. I just didn't care about Cedric. I was a jerk as a child.
Yeah,
Cedric Diggory was my least favorite anything.
Yeah, I only remember you saying bad things about Cedric, as it turns out.
And this, again, this is before the books. This is before, because then they cast Robert Pattinson as Cedric Diggory, which was like, did not like him. Continued not liking him. It was just, oh man, it was bad. But yeah, it's one of those... So even though I think J.K. Rowling handled the idea of death well and gradually in a way... growing up with it should have been fine. That was the big area where it was obvious that I should maybe not have, because I had all the emotional attachment of growing up with it, but not the emotional maturity.
Right.
And it's something that really scares me about my hypothetical kids. I don't like children. Would not have them.
You want nieces and nephews.
Yeah, but it's something that scares me about, like,
when I have kids.
In any kind of adult position with children. Because it's like, because if all of the Harry Potter books had been out as a kid, when I was a kid, I would have read all of them.
Right.
But it's like, how do you space them out? I had to, because they were still coming out.
Right.
But like,
as a 5-year-old, even though you have a very high reading level...
it does not necessarily mean you can handle Order of the Phoenix.
Right, exactly. I think it's one of those things where it's like, kids get a lot more invested in things because they don't have that, like... I mean, they do have the separation of reality and fiction, but I mean, like, they're prone to get more lost in the fiction. Like, It's like an entirely separate world. Like, when you read a book as a child, you, like... transcend the physical world and you are there.
Yeah. It's very real.
Exactly. So it's like when you're confronted with that loss, it feels so real. I mean, even I still get, like, really upset when, like, a character I like really dies, like, even now, because I'm the kind of person that gets very, very, very invested in things. Like, I'm going through the story in One Piece right now, in Treasure Cruise, and, like, I know what happens because, like, 2 of the characters are gonna die, like, at the end of this arc, but I'm still not ready for it, because I'm like, it's gonna be fine, they're gonna save him! Spoilers, they do not!
Oh no.
Spoilers for One Piece, one of them, Luffy's older brother gets a hole just straight punched through his chest, and, like, dies in front of him, and it's like, Jesus fucking Christ, dude. So it's like, I'm building up to that, and I'm like, I'm not ready for that! I'm, like, not emotionally prepared, because, like, when a death is done well enough, even if you know it's coming, it still gets to you.
Yeah.
Like, so even as an adult, when it's that well done, it'll still, like, still fuck you up.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. I'm trying to think, when I was, what was that? When we were in middle school, that's when the Nights game came out, the second Nights game came out, and I was fucking, like, he doesn't die at the end of it. We're gonna have to put a huge fucking spoiler list at the beginning of this.
Yeah.
But he, like, basically, like, fades from existence, so it might as well. I was fucking depressed after that. I was so sad. Like, oh god, it just...
Yeah, that was rough, I remember.
Yeah, because I was just like, that character meant so much to me on a personal level, and it was like, watching that happen was just like, oh no! Oh, fuck! I wasn't ready for that.
Not ready.
So as it turns out, it can be a little bit, intense to deal with.
Especially rough for younger audiences. I do still get very attached. They're still very...
Well, like, I was watching Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, and, you know, the thing on the plane happened, and I was like...
Yeah.
I was so close to crying, and I was like, I mean, it's not over because there's still, like, a bunch of episodes left in that season, but also, I really don't like that. It's real scary.
Yeah. And there's,
yeah.
It's rough. It's also something, and I already brought this up, but I will just say, still, because I do a lot of horror stuff, even the fantasy stuff that I read or write tends to be on the darker side.
That's true.
I have a really tough time with animal death.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's something that's always really rough for me. I've been I don't know, because we're about to do the Westeros test thing. So I've been listening to Game of Thrones. I've been listening to the audiobook again. I don't know why I always do this to myself. The Stark children get these dire wolves. They're a gift from the gods, because there's one for each of them. And I just listened to Lady again.
No!
It's like, I don't know how many times I've read, seen, listened to Game of Thrones, but I cry every time wolf dies.
It's so sad.
It's so rough.
I think it's one of those things, because it's like, we were talking about how, like...
I was crying this morning about Lady. And I knew we were doing this podcast today. I don't know why I would get myself worked up.
It's like one of those things where, oh, you know what got me as a child? Now this is an instance of not permadeath, but in the first Pokemon movie, there's the scene where Ash gets turned to stone, and like fucking all the Pokemon start crying, and even watching it today, I start crying. It really upsets me.
That sounds like...
Because, for context, the whole premise of the first movie is the Mewtwo gets cloned from Mew, and then Mewtwo starts cloning other Pokemon, and has the clones, like, it's like a superiority thing.
Right.
So it's like he clones a Pokemon and is like, the clones are gonna be the new, like, they're gonna take over the world.
It's like Gattaca?
Sure.
With Pokemon?
I'm gonna
Is
go
that
with
correct?
Maybe. Sure, let's go with that.
Okay.
But so, at the end of it, like the big climax is, like, the Pokemon are, like, fighting each other, and, like, they're fighting to the death, and it's like, oh, and so Mew and Mewtwo are fighting, and Ash, like, runs into the middle of it, and gets turned to stone to stop it.
Right.
And it's like, it's real fucking sad as a kid, because, like, it's Ash, and, like, obviously if you watch the show, you're very attached to him, because he's basically you.
Right.
Because, like, you want me
like
a Pokemon master. It's like a...
self-insert.
Right. And it's like, so it's like, it's just very intense, especially because Pikachu is so upset about it. Like, Pikachu, like, goes up and is like, shocking him, like,
Yeah.
using, like, thunder shock on him and snowing him up, and, like, Pikachu starts crying, and it's like, this is so sad! It's just so sad! And, like, so even today, it still gets to me, because I'm like, no! Spoiler alert, he comes back to life, because they're not going to end a Pokemon movie on actual death.
Of course not.
But it's, like, one of those things that even, like, confronting that as a thing can be very upsetting.
Right.
Uh,
That's a big thing that I want to note. So I'm gonna just talk about it now because we don't have a proper advice section.
Right.
This is a good note for creators when you want to have a really emotional death scene. A big thing is reactions and perspective. Because if you care about characters who are upset about the death, that's going to be almost as bad as being upset about the character who died.
Right.
One big thing, and I think that's why Game of Thrones, I think that's why Lady gets me so much.
Yeah.
Is because Lady has to be executed, and the whole thing is that Ned goes, and he's the one to do it because she's from the north, and he thinks she deserves better than, like, a royal executioner.
Right.
So it's like, even though it's not his wolf, you know, as he goes and he kills Lady himself, and it's just so sad.
Right.
Because it's like, we care about Ned Stark. It's hard seeing him do something difficult. It's rough. I'm gonna cry about Lady again.
Don't cry. It's okay. It's okay. We're gonna switch subjects now.
And the other thing, in a lighter Game of Thrones note, Joffrey's death was surprisingly sad in the book. Because, and I don't know why, because it was, the thing that got me about it was Cersei's reaction.
Yeah, that's
to
the thing about it.
Even though, also don't care that much about Cersei.
We don't care about Cersei, but we sort of sympathize with her.
It's hard to see a mother lose her son, and
Right.
that's something that really came through in that scene, even though we were all kind of rooting for Joffrey to die.
Right, we all wanted Joffrey to die, but, like
we'd been waiting for it for a long time, but it was rough. Like, in the book especially, you know, you get to, and then even in the show, because they do the play, they base a play off of Joffrey's death,
right,
and they really romanticize who Joffrey was, but that's a big thing, is that the woman who plays Cersei, they go through, like, a big thing about how she would have reacted to the death of her son, and it's a good perspective on that whole play within a show dynamic. Really,
to play within a show within a musical. But yeah, it's like, so I think coming back around to the, like, the importance of it, especially, like we've talked a lot about it has to be really well done for a younger audience. It's also sort of one of those things that it's like, people are gonna lose people, and I think that through media is a good way to, like, sort of bring up those topics.
Oh, yeah.
Without, like, I mean, obviously you're going to traumatize them a little bit, because that's, you know, it's a hard thing to go through, but I think it sort of gives an outlet for, like, it helps to sort of explore those feelings, or, like, if you've just lost somebody, it can be sort of a catharsis.
Yeah.
Because, like, if you're feeling like you can't, like, cry about, like, what actually happened, if you read something where something similar happens, and you can cry over that, you can sort of use that as a catharsis to explore your own emotions.
Right. And to tie it full circle to end of part one, I want to talk a little bit about Harry Potter again, because the first death in Harry Potter, well, obviously it's Harry's parents. Spoiler alert.
What?
Harry's parents. No, but, like, the first time that they really confront the issue of death in a Harry Potter book is at the end of Sorcerer's Stone. So it's Nicholas Flamel gives up the Sorcerer's Stone, and he's, like, 600 plus years old.
Right.
So he knows that this means his death. But it led to a really good quote, which was something that helped me deal with the concept of death later on. To the well-organized mind, death is but the next great adventure. And that's the kind of stuff that you want to be portraying to younger audiences. You want to give them...
Right. You want to sort of...
like, a more optimistic outlook on...
Right, because even if you are, like, a cynic yourself, like, having sort of that optimistic outlook can help you, like, in the future when you do have to
Yeah.
deal with that kind of stuff. Because it is an inevitability that people will die, obviously.
Right.
So yeah, so let's move on to part 2, which is going to be super cheery because we're going to talk about what makes us sad.
Yes.
And what makes us mad.
Yeah?
It's part 2. We're going to talk about good and bad death in media.
We are. I'm going to slip another quote in here.
What?
At the beginning of part 2, because I've got a bunch of these.
You're just putting them all in there.
The meaning of life is that it stops.
Jesus Christ.
Franz Kafka said that.
Mmm, spicy.
Okay.
Jesus Christ.
I know. Also, that was one of my motivational ones, and I'm starting to
is it motivational though?
evaluate my position here.
That seems like something you should do, yes.
But yeah, best and worst. We talked a little bit about impactful ones.
Right.
I don't know. I would like to talk a little bit about, like, interesting takes.
Yes.
On it.
Do it.
That would be something cool for me to do. I've talked about this a little bit, so I'm not going to expand on it too much, but one of my favorite takes on the whole concept of death is in Grim Fandango.
Mm-hmm.
Because the whole thing takes place in the afterlife, and it's a really unique take on it.
Yeah.
It made for a really interesting video game premise. It kind of captures the mystical elements of what might happen after you die with the mundane, everyday life kind of vibe.
Right.
And it was a really interesting thing to play through, but also it had a lot of really cool ideas about the afterlife. Because you play just in, like, this limbo area. And it kind of tackled, because you can die in limbo, and that is just the end of everything, so they kind of tackled the idea of being gone permanently versus the idea of being reborn and moving on.
Right.
Which were all, like, really adult themes for, like, to underlie a video game.
Right.
That was good. I liked it.
It's nice. One of my favorite takes on death is in, spoiler alert, Book of Life. Because it's so good, because half of the movie takes place in the afterlife after Manolo dies. And so it's like, it's real cool because they have like the 2 levels of it, which are there's the Land of the Remembered, which is like it's a party all the time. It's full of bright colors. It's just food and music and all sorts of great stuff going on all the time. And like, that's where all of Manolo's relatives are, because they're all remembered by his family, and everything like that. And so it's like a real, like, bright take on it about what happens, like, after you move on. It's like you sort of get to live again without worries.
Right.
But it's also interesting because, like, you get to see what all the relatives think of who he has become up to this point and moving through it. And then there's also the Land of the Forgotten, which is what happens when you're no longer remembered. Right. And that's where it's just sad and gloomy, and you just fade away from existence entirely.
Right.
And it's like, oh no. But so, it's really cool just to see, like, the diversity, because it's based off of the Mexican folklore also. So right. It's like, it's just real cool. I think it's, like, really well done. And I mean, the skeleton designs are really great also. So it's like, I like it. I like it a lot. I think it has a very interesting take on death. Because then we also go back to the Land of the Living, where, you know, people are sort of dealing with that.
Yeah.
And it's, some of them also end up, you know, coming down during the movie. And it's like, which can be really sad or really funny. Like, because his dad also dies, like, protecting the town, and so he comes down, and then his grandmother shows up, like, 5 minutes later, and his dad is like, what are you doing here? And she's like, cholesterol. And that's it. That's, like, the entire... So it's, like, it can be, like, it's really well done in all the aspects of representing death and what it does and how it sort of is.
Nice.
In theory.
That's a good point to make, is that if you want to develop a really rich kind of concept of the afterlife, it's always a good idea to go back to historical roots or folklore.
Mm-hmm.
Really good.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but I think, like, the general concept of, like, the 7 circles of hell is just, like, really boring.
Yeah?
Like, I don't... Like, I understand, but also I just think it's sort of like... There could be, like, other things, though. Maybe it's not all bad. Maybe some things are not bad. I already put up with everything on Earth. I don't need to keep doing with that after I'm dead.
See, that's true. But it's also something you can put a fun twist on.
Right.
It's like the robot hell.
Oh my god.
Like the different layers of robot hell. There's a fun musical number about it in Futurama. So it's one of those things. But yeah, that's one of the more popular ones. It does get really overdone. And you get to see the same basic concept rehashed a lot of times.
Right.
So a lot of times it doesn't stick out unless it's very inventive.
Like robot hell?
Like robot hell. Or I have this, this shows kind of the theology going on in my upbringing, but I was exposed to the 9 layers of Avernus before the different layers of hell, and Avernus, for those of you who don't know, is like the hell equivalent in Dungeons & Dragons, because I'm a big nerd.
That's true, though.
So that
place is fucked up, though.
Yeah. Oh god, yeah.
But it's like, yeah, it's like, that's like a twist on, like, the layers of hell. It's like, but it's, first of all, they added to.
Yeah, they did.
And it's like, it has its own unique culture and
it's
stuff.
got playable areas.
Ooh,
Lots of monsters.
Nice! Roll up some dice! Fuck.
But yeah, it does, build on it. And, like, you can see, I think it's really interesting because some of the strongest world building points are based off of mythology and a lot of really popular things.
Right.
It's something, while you were talking about Book of Life, I was kind of reminded of the Elysian Fields from Xena, which is based off of the actual concept of the afterlife in Greek mythology. Mm-hmm. So it's like, that was fun.
It's like one of those things where I would really like to see, like, because we're not going to get it out of the Thor cinematic universe, like, for Marvel, because it's not, like, really, it doesn't quite follow the mythology.
Yeah.
Where it's like, but I would love to see, like, a modern take on, like, Valhalla and, like, Hell and, like, the other afterlives in Norse mythology, besides the ones I'm doing right now, in a campaign you will hear in 3 years.
I'm gonna jump in here real fast, because I feel like it's important to... Doing twists is important. Mm-hmm. There's always that twisting something too far, but there's also... Because I brought up the Elysian Field, so I'm also going to bring up Valhalla from Xena, which was an experience. Xena was one of those rare things. They tried to do something really interesting in that they started with Greek mythology, and as the show went on, they tried to expand to other areas of mythology, and they had a Norse season, which had really good ups and downs. Mm-hmm. I'd say more downs overall. Valhalla was one of those things. It's like, if you ever find yourself in a situation where you have a camera person from the future and also you're going to Valhalla in the course of, like, a few episodes, you've messed up.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That was when Xena started to really go downhill. And as much as I'll defend the show, the last few seasons were
rough.
Good. But they had, like, a lot of really interesting takes on Norse mythology for the parts that they got right. A good example, they had the Valkyries, which was something that was really interesting, because when we got to see Xena in Valhalla, because that makes sense.
Right, of course.
She's a Norse warrior.
Definitely.
Obviously, she goes to Valhalla. But it was definitely, I felt really bad, because it was one of those situations where the interesting concept was so overshadowed by how out of place it was in a Greek mythology setting.
Right. Like, it didn't mesh the way it should have.
Right.
It's like how like, with the new God of War game, it's like they set it entirely in Norse mythology, rather than trying to blend it into the Greek mythology of the past games.
Yeah.
And, like, I haven't ever...
That was horrifying.
There's just a child just screamed. Just Sirius Black just died.
Oh, no.
But no, so it's like it was a smart idea not to try to blend it with the other game, because like when you're blending a bunch of mythologies, it's real hard to get it right.
Yeah.
And it should sort of be something you're doing from the beginning, as opposed to like sort of introducing it later, unless you like have a really good way to transition it.
And that was that was where the whole Norse season just like really did fail, because it was 4 seasons of Greek mythology, and then we're like taking on Odin, and it's like, that's not great.
Wait, hold on a second.
Maybe
don't do that.
But yeah, it's a really interesting concept if you're able to blend different kinds of mythologies into one thing. I definitely suggest that you try it.
It's one of those things, there's this one short film, I really love. Oh, what's the name of it? It's the one with the little Grim Reaper. That does the...
What's that called?
I have to look it up.
Okay.
Now. But that's a really cool one. I'm gonna look this up, because I love this film so much. And it's...
I'm gonna hop in with another quote.
Yeah, do a quote while I look that up.
We who think we are about to die will laugh at anything. Terry Pratchett, Night's Watch. It's good.
Nice, dude. Okay, I'm gonna... It's Deathiner, because it's...
That's right.
Designer, but Death. It's so cute. It's like a 10-minute short film. You can find it on YouTube, and it's like, because it has like a bunch of the different deaths, because it's like, it has the Egyptian ones. It has another one, I don't remember what it is, but then it has like the English Grim Reaper also.
Yeah.
I think it's the Asian ones is the other one. But like, so it has the 3, and it's like, so it has them like all training their kids to become the next Reapers, and like, and it's like the one Reaper doesn't want to do it the way the other ones are doing it. Like, he doesn't want to like force death on anyone. He wants to be a clothing designer.
Yeah.
And so it's like he spends the whole time like making clothes, and in the end it ends up being his own way to help spirits into the afterlife. And it's so cute. I had a like thing when I was in New York. It was like we had to show like videos for our animation class every week that like inspired us. So I did that one, and then I did Blackwater Gospel.
I was just gonna say, while we're recommending short films that deal with the concept of death, everyone please
Blackwater Gospel is so good.
The Undertaker is like one of my favorite death representations.
Yeah, he's like so cool. Like, and it's real.
And the soundtrack.
It's also just such an interesting take on like paranoia.
Oh yeah.
When it comes to it, because the whole thing is shows up in town and everyone's like, who's gonna die? And then he doesn't go away.
Yeah.
And it's like everyone just gets more and more paranoid, and it's so good.
Really good.
I got a reputation for being the person that showed the dark videos in class, because I also
That's always
showed
a fun reputation.
I also showed Don't Home Became Scared. So like whoops.
Yeah. So another thing that I want to talk about this week for death, I want to talk about The Book Thief. Which, look at me, getting us back on World War II.
Look at you! You did it again.
But Book Thief is really interesting because Death is the narrator for the story. And it's really beautifully written, but it gives kind of a look on how humans see life and death from an outsider's perspective. And there's a line that I should have taken when I was doing all my quote things, and I didn't do it. But there's, like, a thing where it's like, so often humans think they're running at other humans when really they're running at me. And it was just one of those things about war.
Right.
You know, and they got a lot of the opposing sides in there. It was good. But I did take a quote from it. And it's one of my favorite, because it's death, obviously, describing itself from the perspective of a narrator, and I thought it was really good. I do not carry a sickle or a scythe. I only wear a hooded black robe when it's cold, and I don't have those skull-like facial features you seem to enjoy pinning on me from a distance. You want to know what I truly look like? I'll help you out. Find yourself a mirror while I continue.
God.
And it's good. It's a good
so
book.
Good.
I recommend it. I recommend it for a lot of reasons. Because it's beautifully written anyway. But the concept of death was really interesting. And because it's just, she, genderless. But he kind of raises, like, it's set in World War II, and he's just got to collect all these souls. And it's just, there are people killing each other by the millions. And it's just his job to get everybody on to the next thing. And, he's, like, one of the characters that he's watching, when he gets to bring them, the whole thing is that he's, like, spoiler alert, I guess, for The Book Thief. Did you know a lot of people have died?
Whoa! No way!
But it's one of those things, he's watching this girl, and his path intersects with her, like, multiple times throughout the war. And he's looking back, telling her story. And even though he's come so close to taking her all these times, he never gets to, he ends up finding her diary, like the book that she's writing, before she escapes him. And it's just one of those really interesting things, because when he does finally take her, she's an old woman, and she's survived everything, and he gets to walk home with her like she's an old friend. They just know each other. And it's like, that's always one of my favorite death mythologies, is where death just greets someone. Right. Like, that was also the thing for the Tales of Beetle the Bard, the three brothers. Yeah. Because the one just keeps escaping death forever and ever, until one day he's like, I'm ready, and they just walk on together, and it's like, it's nice. It's
a nice image.
It is.
It's a lot. It falls into that, it's the next step kind of thing. Speaking of death that walks home with you, Sandman death is real good. We were gonna get here eventually. Yeah. I love her.
I cosplayed her earlier this year.
You did! But yeah, she's just, like, so chill and relaxed, and sassy, like, all the time, because it's like, she shows up, like, the first time, to talk to Dream, and she's just, like, slaps him, and is like, you are a poor excuse for a personification of a concept. And so, but it's like, because they spend that whole chapter, like, walking together, and she's just, like, walking and ends up wherever she needs to be, and, like, taking people's souls, and it's, like, all over the place. But I think it was really cool, because at the beginning, like, they run into those teens who are, like, and the one flirts with her, and then they come back around to that, and he's dead, and she, like, picks him up. Yeah. And it's like, oh, man. Whew! But I think she's a really excellent personification, because she's like, it's just the job. It's nothing personal. Right. And it's like, that's also, I think, a really good thing for, like, the Grim Reaper sort of thing, is, like, it's not, everybody does it. Yeah. It's not just you.
It's good. And I'm gonna drop a recommendation in here, not just for Sandman, but there was a spin-off by Jill Thompson called At Death's Door. I read it first. I don't know why.
Why not?
But
because Sandman is ridiculously long.
I think it's one of those things, I had access to it first. Right. And, you know, when I was a kid, I'd read, like, literally anything I could get my hands on.
That's true.
Which also, while we're talking about the personification of death, Death from Discworld.
What?
The
No
Reaper.
way!
Really good. Reaper Man is one of my, all-time favorite... It's my favorite Discworld novel.
I love that name. Reaper Man!
Reaper Man, it's really good. There's a Discworld, and for those of you who aren't familiar with Discworld, they're a non-sequential series. You can just kind of pick one up and read about something that's happening in this universe.
Right.
But Deathman, there's a mortal who is trying to kill himself, but Death has taken a vacation.
God!
So, he can't do it. And it's a really morbid, kind of,
That's dark
it's a
humor.
morbid comedy, which describes Discworld pretty well.
Yeah, that
there's,
sounds about
always
right.
kind of dark stuff going on it's not always quite as obvious
But-
as Reaper Man was, but it's always there. It's really good.
Also, we're talking about, guess who's coming back to the Adventure Zone?
What?
It's me! You got to talk about Game of Thrones, so I get to talk about Adventure Zone.
That's fair. I'm not even... Don't know you.
But it's the Kravitz, one of the Grim Reapers who works for the Raven Queen, I love him so much, because he starts off and he's real serious bounty hunter. He's like, I gotta take your heads because you've escaped death fucking 50 goddamn times, and I don't know how that happened because I've never seen you before, but fuck you. And so it's he goes after them, and it's we slowly get to see him become more of a person, because he goes on a date with Taco, and because they had to settle a bargain so that he wouldn't reap them and take them back to jail hell. But we get to see him as in the first arc, he had an accent. He had a thick British accent, and then when he comes back in the interlude for the date, he's using it, and then he's like, is it okay if I drop this accent? I can't do it. It's a work thing. I'm just gonna stop. And so it's just it's so funny, and it's so refreshing to see the Grim Reaper as an agent of somebody else.
Yeah,
because it's he's just doing the job to keep things together, but also falling in love with somebody that's alive. And I'm sort of a sucker for the death in love with life thing, and the vice versa. I think that's a really fun concept, because the two exist together permanently. You can't have one without the other, because otherwise that's just limbo, I guess.
Can I talk about Say Anything?
Sure.
Can I talk about a mortal being in love with life? But
Are you
has
okay?
a boyfriend?
Oh my god!
Bless my soul, I'm out to destroy them.
Wow!
I want death. Death for my birthday. I'm so happy.
Wow. Never thought you'd get that one in there.
I was never planning to talk about that on the podcast.
I was
and
also...
here it happened.
I was not prepared for you to do that either. Wow.
Jewish punk music, guys. Listen to it.
There's so much. Oh, Max Bemis. Is he still Jewish punk music?
No, now he's converted but angry about it, punk music. Because his wife is Christian.
Right.
He converted.
But
he still talks a lot about being Jewish.
Jesus Christ.
And angry.
Oh, no.
Which I guess is good, because otherwise it would be an entirely different band.
Yeah, otherwise it'd be, oh man, Say Anything is an experience.
They are a real experience.
That's the only way to describe Say Anything.
But lyrically, very interesting song.
Yeah.
It's from their self-titled album, and it's good. It was really interesting. I like stuff like that.
Right.
It was, because it's one of those, a lot of their songs are whiny first-person things about being in a band and not getting laid, which I guess is at its core what punk music is.
That's true. I can't deny that.
And they were very self-aware about the fact that's what they were doing. But Death for My Birthday is a song that is a narrative experience that kind of, talked about the chorus a little bit. It's really interesting because it kind of gets the idea that life and death are personified people, but it doesn't get into that because it's busy telling the story of the guy.
Right. It's like, but the concept is still there, and it's like it's a real strong narrative element to use, even if it's just in passing.
Yeah. Even though, and it's like a 3-minute song or whatever.
Yeah, it's not that long. It's not one of their longer ones.
Yeah. It's just really interesting.
It's good. I feel like I had one more I wanted to talk about, but I can't remember what it was.
I don't know. Was it Good Place?
Oh my god, I love Good Place so much. No, but we should talk about Good Place.
We should talk about Good Place.
The whole thing is set in the afterlife.
That was the other thing, while you were talking about the Adventure Zone, because you were talking about the British accent thing, and it's in the second season of Good Place, Tahani suggests that Chidi uses a British accent to break bad news because it softens the blow. So there's it's just for an episode, but there's this ongoing thing where Chidi's trying to learn a British accent.
Oh my god.
So he can give people bad news without making them sad. And it's
god. It's such a fun show. Cause it's it's always stuff like that. And it's trying to be content in the afterlife, which does not happen. For multiple reasons in the show.
Yeah.
But I won't spoil that one, because that one's just too good.
Even though it's a meme, we won't spoil it. We promise.
It's fine. It's all good. No memes on this show. This isn't a meme-free zone. I got a text this morning from Isabel, and she was like, we're watching a dank meme compilation in science class, and William texted back and was like...
You said it!
I did say his name
crazy.
Finally, but
I was just about to say he's gonna be so mad that Isabel's name came up before his.
Well, it still did come up before his.
It still did.
But William texted back and it was like, sounds dank, and then Ben texted back and it was like, sounds memes, and I texted in the conversation, and I was like, I hate every word of this conversation.
Good.
And then William texted back moist, and Isabel texted back yeet, and I was like, we don't have to live like this.
Good.
And then I just said a sad face. So that's memes. That's why we can't have memes on the podcast.
No memes.
No memes.
Okay.
That's your meme interlude for the week.
Moving away from memes, I guess.
Thank you.
One of my favorite interpretations of death also is in Final Destination.
I was wondering if you would talk about that, because I was like, oh, wait.
Death is the antagonist in Final Destination, but he's a passive antagonist.
Right.
Because he's not like a personified version of death. It's just the concept of death that everyone is going up against. And, everyone always picks on the Final Destination sequels, which is fair. In a lot of instances, there's a lot of stuff to pick on. But the concept for 2, I think, was one of the most fascinating takes on death, and one of the best premises for a horror sequel ever.
Mm-hmm. Which was 2.
Those of you who don't know, I'm gonna hop in real fast. For those of you who aren't familiar with the plot of Final Destination, for those of you who don't keep up on your early 2000s horror movies that no one cares about anymore, Final Destination is a kid gets a premonition of a plane accident while he's on the plane. So he gets off, and he gets 6 other people off the plane with him. The plane crashes, but you find out that those 6 kids were supposed to die on that plane crash. So the first movie, there are all of these accidents happening to kill off each of the kids who would have died on the plane crash.
Right.
Which is the concept for the first movie. The concept for the second movie is that him surviving and getting each of those kids off of the plane crash caused a ripple effect that prevented other accidents where people should have died. Mm-hmm. It delayed, I don't remember how many people were in Final Destination, but for the sake of argument, let's say it was 6 again. Right. There were 6 people whose travel plans got delayed by that plane accident.
Right.
Not going down the way that it was originally supposed to. So each of them Death is, like, tying up its loose ends in the second movie. And there's a big highway accident where they were all supposed to be there. But someone has a premonition of that one also, rescues the people who were supposed to die, and they all found, like, as the movie progresses and they're all trying to escape these traps that Death has laid out for them, they're tying together the story from the first one and realizing that they all should have already been dead once before, which is why the car accident was supposed to happen. And it's like, it's just a really interesting premise for a horror movie that I think gets really overlooked because of other flaws in the movie. But in terms of, like, representing death, I just thought it was, like, really good.
Right. It's like, it's interesting to see how, like, because different media and genre obviously have different ways of taking death and, like, presenting it. It's like, because horror movies are going to take a lot more of the, like, scary, cynical route for it, where, like, a lot of fantasy more moves towards the optimistic sort of stuff. And it's like, so it's definitely, like, a genre thing, I think, when it comes to death. Like, how it's represented and how it's treated, sort of thing.
And I think that's one of the reasons, Final Destination, I always thought was one of, like, the scarier franchises when I was a kid, because it was the only one that took a look at death in that way. Horror doesn't typically take it all that seriously.
Right. It's just another thing that happens.
Especially in early 2000s, because that was, like, the slasher, torture porn...
Right, that was...
gore era. And it's like, story-wise, death didn't carry the same impact in most cases.
Right.
Yeah.
There wasn't a fear of death, there was a fear of being killed.
Yeah.
It wasn't about what happened after, it was the act of being killed.
Oh, speaking of which, hey.
We found another one, folks.
Yeah, it is nothing to die, it is frightful not to live. Victor Hugo.
That's true. Ooh.
Working them in there.
You're getting them. You're getting them there. So I guess we can talk a little bit about, like, our favorite, like, actual deaths that have happened. 'Cause, like, it's hard to find, like, a favorite death, because it's, like...
Hold on.
Yes,
real fast,
go
just
ahead.
before we transition.
Yes.
The last thing that I wanted to talk about, on that note, on the death and representation note, is I wanted to talk about Dollhouse real fast.
What? No! No way!
Cheating death in Dollhouse is, like, one of the most interesting, because you have the technology to put the personality and memories of anyone you want into the body of one of these dolls. And it's being used for very specific purposes, because they are selling fantasies and coming up with, like, an underground corporation.
Right.
Are the two things. So it's never intended as a way to cheat death. But there is one episode where a recurring client dies, and she has a pre-set up thing, so that her personality will be... she thinks she's going to be murdered. So she sets up this deal where she can come back in the body of a doll long enough to figure out who killed her. And it was one of the most interesting things, because at the end of the episode, they kind of realize that she has to give the body back, because it's in her contract, she can't do it.
Right.
But it's one of those things where they realize they kind of have figured out how to cheat death, essentially. Because, in theory, someone could keep transferring themselves over and over and over and over again.
It's like the concept of transferring yourself into a robot body.
Yeah. And it's something where it's like one of the big reasons why it was in her contract she had to give the body back was because that was where even the evil corporation drew the line.
Right.
They're like, this is not what we're here to do, and it was, like, really interesting. And it was, watching them take the memories out of the doll for the last time was really... In a way, it was, like, one of the most disturbing death scenes.
Right. Because it was, like, it's a different kind of death.
Yeah, where we get used to, in the media, treating death a certain way. And it was an interesting episode that I wanted to bring up.
It's good.
Yeah. But yes.
So, like, moving on to death scenes, it's hard to say you have a favorite death scene, because, of course, it's just sad. Like, it's not good. But there are certain ones that are done very well. Can you guess what I'm going to talk about?
Oh.
It's Maze Hughes.
Is it? Oh. No!
I'm so sad.
Why are you gonna do this to me?
Cause it's so sad. It gets me every fucking time.
Okay. Here we go.
So, Fullmetal Alchemist is so sad. And it's just fucking... Maze Hughes fucking gets me every time. Because every part of his death and, like, everything that follows afterwards is so fucking sad. Because it's like, he's trying to help the boys out, and he gets killed by one of the homunculus. And it's fucked up. It's so sad. He just gets straight up murdered, and it's like, he was the best dad! He was the best everything! And it's like one of those things where it's like, even though, like, he himself had technically done nothing wrong, it wasn't done senselessly. Yeah. Like, there was a clear intention behind it, and it moved the story forward. But I don't know how many times I can see Roy Mustang fucking cry at his grave. That's the thing
that gets me every time.
This is like the fucking, it's raining. It's like, well, and there's also his daughter at the funeral being like, they can't put him in the dirt, he has to go to work.
Oh, God,
He has to go to work. What are you doing to my dad? And it's like,
I can't believe you're talking about Maze Hughes on the podcast.
You know we had to talk about Maze Hughes. But that's consistently just one of the deaths that always I'm like, it's so well done.
Yeah.
And it's like, it does so much for the story. And it's like, fuck, man.
I guess one of the ones I'm gonna talk about is How I Met Your Mother. Spoilers. I'm gonna talk about Marshall's dad.
Oh yeah.
Like, really hit me, because they go through the whole episode. Because kind of what they were going for is that people that you love can be taken away from you very suddenly. Mm-hmm. And Marshall goes through this whole thing. He and his wife are trying to have a baby, and he's been talking to his dad about it. His dad's been, like, trying to get him through it. And he thinks that his wife is pregnant, and he tells his dad, and then he finds out that his wife isn't pregnant, and he doesn't feel like he's able to share that information because his dad's, like, so proud of him, and he spends the whole episode kind of dodging these calls. And then you find out at the end that Marshall's dad dies of a heart attack. And it was, like, such a rough ending.
It's so sad.
It's a half-hour comedy, and just, like, the whole episode is done in a very comedic light up through until the end, where like, Marshall and Lily are fighting, and she gets the call from his mom, so she gets the news before he does, and, like, she has to tell him at the end of the episode, and and artistically it was done very well. Like, in the background you can see there's kind of a countdown running, like, every time they show a clock, it's been counting down, and it just, like, it's rough. That one gets me every time. It's one of the only, because I was talking, there are a lot of animal deaths that get me consistently every time I watch, but Marshall's dad is, like, one of the, and he's such a minor character on the show, but he's so hard to lose. And it's one of those things, if you care about the people who are suffering the loss also.
Right, because we care about Marshall. Of course we care about Marshall.
So watching him lose his dad was rough. It's like a really...
Oh, this is a rough subject. We should have known this going into it.
Oh, yeah.
So, one of the other ones I'm going to talk about is from Rent. Have you seen Rent?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So it's like fucking Angel's death always gets me real bad, because it's like, and it's even stronger in the stage version, because, like, in the movie it's like we get the whole Without You sequence where it goes through everybody, like, breaking up and everything, but while, like, Joanne and Maureen are breaking up, and Mimi and Roger are breaking up. Meanwhile, Angel is dying. And it's like,
yeah.
Oh, God. For those of you who haven't seen Rent, the whole premise is it takes place in, like, the I think, the 80s. It takes place during the AIDS crisis in New York. And so it follows, like, a bunch of, like neo-bohemians who are, like, living in the, like, tent cities and, like, sort of rundown apartments, and, like, there's a lot of, like, LGBT representation in it because, like, that was the big community that was affected by the AIDS crisis. And so several of the characters are affected by this, and about halfway through, one of them dies from it, and it's, like, in the stage version, like, she gets a whole song, like, that's while she's dying.
Yeah.
And it's, like, but, like, the aftermath of it is, like, the funeral and everything, and it's, like, everyone's, like, talking about how she impacted their lives, and then her boyfriend comes up and, like, reprises their love song, and it's, like, you can't do that. Ben had to console me so much while we were in the theater watching it, because I was a mess. I was just an entire mess during that song. So it's, like, one of those things where it's, like, it's really powerful, and it's really sad, because it's based in so much realism, and it's, like, oh, God damn it!
Yeah, that's rough.
No, so damn. Let's talk about bad deaths.
Oh, I have
one more. If you have one more.
One more good media thing. Yeah, because I wanted to talk about this when I knew we were covering the subject. Because I've got to get that timely thing in there, and I've got to be controversial. I want to talk about 13 Reasons Why.
Oh, that's right.
I really like the show. I'm just going to come out and say that. I think it's a good show. I liked the book a lot. I think Jay Asher is very talented as a writer. I understand a lot of the controversy that surrounds the show, but I feel this is one of those things, just to get off on a tangent here, I think Netflix has gone above and beyond in trying to open a discussion and provide resources to people.
Yeah.
And it's that line where it's, like, I understand why people are mad. I understand how it's a triggering show and why people are, because it covers a lot of very touchy subjects, but it's one of those things where it's, like, I don't like all of the protests going around trying to get it taken off completely.
Right.
Because for as many, because you know it's a triggering topic going in, and Netflix does its best to warn you going in.
Right.
Like, it's the only show, it doesn't skip the end credits. They've gone through so that, like, you get all of the resource information at the end. There are warnings by the cast. They have, like, an open discussion about it, and I feel like they've tried really hard.
Right.
And it's suicide anyway is, like, it's such a touchy thing.
Right.
It's something that hits really close to home for a lot of people. I was a little bit leery about it going in, but that's one of those things where it's, like, even if I had been triggered by 13 Reasons Why, I knew that might be the case going in, and as an adult, I decided to watch it anyway.
Right.
Like,
I don't think it at any point tries to hide the fact that that's what it's about.
Right.
That's what it's discussing.
But, so that's kind of where I stand on the whole thing. And now that I've gotten that out of the way, I do want to talk about, I think one of the most impactful deaths for me on a show was Hannah Baker. And it's one of those things, it's not a surprise. We know that she's committed suicide. We hear her voice from the tapes that she's left throughout. That's the whole premise of the show. But in the finale, like toward the end of the season 1 finale, we get to see it happen. And it's hard to watch. It's like it's one of those moments it's painful to sit through even though you know what's going on. And what it comes back around to again is that it's not all that long after it's happened that her mom finds her. And Kate Walsh, I think, is a very, very talented actress. It was really rough performance, like, for her, I imagine. It just, like, devastating to watch, but it was done really well, and it left a really big impact. I feel like it gets me.
It's like one of those things that, like, resonates.
Yeah. So it was good. And I think that's one of the things, working with a visual format like a show, because there was not a lot of dialogue in the scene where she does it or the scene where she's found. There was very, very little dialogue.
Right.
But you can feel it, and it's like,
it's the atmosphere of the whole thing and the feeling of it all.
Good execution always kind of pays out.
Right.
So yeah, that was my other big... but yeah, bad ones.
Yeah, let's talk about bad ones now, because as it turns out, as many writers that can do it good, many writers do it bad. I'm looking at you, Joss Whedon.
Oh, I actually learned an interesting thing about Avengers. Not Age of Ultron. Avengers.
First Avengers.
Yeah, first Avengers. They cut out a bunch of Coulson's death.
Really?
Because Avengers got an R rating based off of Coulson's original death scene.
Jesus Christ!
They said it was too graphic, and that they were going to give the film an R rating. And at the time, because this was before Deadpool,
right?
Deadpool 2, remember? No one thought that there would be a market for an R-rated superhero film, so they readjusted it.
Jesus Christ!
Yeah.
As it turns out, there is a market for R-rated. I still need to see Deadpool 2. I'm gonna take.
It's good.
I'm gonna go see it with somebody. I'll get there.
But yeah,
fucking
Age of Ultron.
Fucking Age of Ultron is goddamn the worst. I fucking hate that movie so much. Goddamn, fucking Quicksilver's death was just so fucking unnecessary.
You know the reason why they did it, though.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
But also, they could have done it better.
They could have done it a lot better. Especially... Joss Whedon is so good at death scenes. Like, I didn't talk about any of them while we were doing good things.
Right.
But some of the most impactful death scenes I've ever seen have been Joss Whedon.
Like a leaf on the wind.
A leaf on the wind. Fucking... Oh. I don't care what you believe, just as long as you believe.
Captain Hammer will save us.
Oh, God. Fucking Captain Hammer will save us. There's... Buffy, the hardest thing in this world to do is to live in it.
God!
I can't. So, it's so rough because we know death scenes are what he's good at.
Right.
I don't know what happened in fucking Age of
It
Ultron.
was like one of those things where it's like, it just like fucking happened, and it was like, you fucking serious? Quicksilver can't dodge a bullet? That's his whole thing, dude! It was one of those things where I really felt like, I know why they couldn't keep him in the universe.
Yeah.
But I feel like they either could have sent him somewhere or done him more justice. Because, like, getting just killed by a bullet, like, honestly, it was a cop-out.
It was bad.
It was, like, so, like, just... dumb. It makes me so mad.
It's... so frustrating to see a character die in a way that just is not worthy of their death. It's one of my biggest problems with Syrio Forel.
Oh, yeah.
In Game of Thrones. Because Syrio Forel is I have a cat named after him.
I love Syrio.
He's such a good character. He has a lot of interesting opinions about death also. As it turns out. But he is a master swordsman. He's the first sword to the Sea Lord of Bravos. He is a teacher. He's just one of the best swordsmen. He dies off screen. We don't get to see it happen. And
of all the deaths not to show on screen,
we see him kill 4 out of 5 Kingsguard men. Or, not Kingsguard. Whatever guard.
Right.
There's one Kingsguard there, and then, like, a bunch of other dudes. Mm-hmm. And we see him take down, like, the whole group of them, except for one, and his sword is broken. There are lots of swords lying around, and it's like, and he's like, today is not the day I die. Like, he gives this whole beautiful, eloquent speech about it. Arya leaves, and then the other guy we see in the show later, and it drives me crazy because we find out he's like the worst swordsman, and it's like, There,
the fuck are you talking
there
about?
still has to. I'm still waiting for it to.
Right? For him to come back?
Not be. There is no way Marion Trant could kill Serial Pharrell, and we don't get to see it happen.
Like, that's not correct.
Uh,
You're fucking yanking my chain around Game of Thrones.
yeah.
What are some other really bad? I feel like there's, like, so many bad death scenes that I can't even, like...
This is kind of a different thing. The lack of death scenes, or, like, it's something that really bothers me when there's, like... I think bringing back someone in a show or series or whatever can be really interesting if done well. It's something that Buffy managed to pull off 2 times for Buffy, and it was good. I liked it. But if you bring back too many characters too many times, death starts to lose meaning within the universe.
It's Superman syndrome.
It's why I don't like Bucky. I'm just gonna come out and say it. Don't like Winter
fine.
Soldier.
It's fine. We don't
like Bucky.
We've talked about this at length in
the...
What was that? Because we were talking to
War
Ben about it, and I was
after.
like, am I supposed to like Bucky? And we were just like, I guess. Yeah.
Because that was such... The scene where he died had so much impact
Right.
on Captain America, and then it retroactively lost all the impact when he came back for Winter Soldier, because it wasn't done well, and
Winter Soldier was a weak movie.
Yeah.
Honestly. God. And I mean, it also doesn't help that, like, Bucky does not have any character development at all in the MCU.
Yeah.
Like, he's, I was reading, like, I was reading a thing on it because they've completely erased Bucky and Black Widow's relationship, which is, like, a big thing in the comics. And it's, like, because, like, in the comics they, like, really explore, like, their mental illnesses and how they sort of cope with each other, and how being together is, like, really good for them. And, like, in the MCU, there's just absolutely none of that. Like,
which is fine. I feel like if they had done it in the... I don't have a problem with it in the comics. I feel like if they had attempted to do it in the MCU, it would have been bad.
I feel like it also would have been bad. I feel like they
made the right call not doing that.
But I just wish they had even taken, like, a little bit of Bucky's character and, like, made him into a character. Because he's just sort of... Because the thing I read from the thing is, right now he's just a projection shell. Yeah. There's nothing there. He's just for people to project their own personality onto for him.
Yeah.
So it's like... Oh. God.
Also, Twilight.
Everything about Twilight.
I'm just gonna throw that in there.
Jesus Christ.
Because...
I mean, that's just everything.
Breaking Dawn. They, like, killed a bunch of people in the movie, and I got so excited.
And then they
like,
didn't.
psych. No one died. It's like, fuck you.
Seems like... I know that was in the book, but also fuck you.
An example, because I used a good example from How I Met Your Mother, I'm gonna hop back into a bad example. And I was talking about this last week for pacing. The end of How I Met Your Mother was paced very poorly, and big spoiler alert for How I Met Your Mother, he ends up with Robin, because the mother is dead when he's telling the story. The mother has already, like, 10 years before the show starts, the mother has passed away of a terminal disease.
What the actual fuck?
They kill her in the course of, like, 10 minutes in the series finale.
I don't think I can stress and how badly by the end of How I Met Your Mother, how much I don't want Ted and Robin to be together.
Well, the kids, do, apparently. Because that's the whole thing for the end of How I Met Your Mother, is they're like... Most of this story was just about how you loved Aunt Robin once, Dad. Go get her. And it's like, or don't, maybe.
Or maybe don't.
Maybe don't go get her. But that's, so killing off the mother it's one of those things, I think it was a really interesting choice, and I think it could have been really sad and poignant if they had ended on that. But going through that whole thing just to cycle back around to now Ted can be with Robin was so bad.
Right, God,
It was such a rough, and it did take a lot of the meaning out of the mom's death.
Right, because it's like, oh, well, I'm just gonna move on now. Because it's like,
It's not only like, I'm going to move on, it's like, I moved on 10 years ago when your mom died.
It's like that's fucked up, man. That's fucked up. God.
So that's maybe the worst one.
Yeah, that's pretty fucking bad, as it turns out. I'm trying to rein in the dog who is going to kill Cat if he is not stopped.
Is it time for a sad quote?
I guess it's time for a sad quote.
While you're reining in a dog?
Yeah, he just wants me to stand and pet him now, I guess.
Nice.
Fucking, I have a bad one.
Oh.
Fucking the end of Pokemon X. God! Damn Pokemon X and Y, the story is so bad. Like, I enjoyed it while I was going through it, but, like, I'm looking back on it and I'm just consistently like, holy shit. Oh my god, it was so bad. Cause it's like, they fucking kill off Lysandre. You actively murder a man, basically.
Pokemon X is my favorite Pokemon game, guys.
Because you get to murder a man.
I get to murder a man.
Cause it was like fucking, I literally did not give a shit about the entire story until he was like, I'm gonna kill all the Pokemon, and then I was like, you gotta die, and then he actually died, and it was like, what the fuck was that? I'm playing Pokemon over here. I don't have time for this. I don't have time to think about my fucking moral obligations. And then I got crushed under a giant fucking flower laser.
Good.
And I'm up here and like everyone's like, it's not your fault. And it's like, what am I supposed to feel here? Am I supposed to feel bad? Am I supposed to feel anything?
You're supposed to feel nothing.
Well, I didn't. I was mostly just annoyed. Because I had to start my Pokemon journey for this. I did catch a cool deer, though. So that was worth it.
That's nice.
Also, fucking, goddamn, the whole villain concept in that game was so bad. Because it was just like, he walks in and it's like, this is obviously the villain. Look at his hair. Look at his... Do you guys not notice this? And everyone was like, oh, that's fine. It's all good. He literally talks about fucking purifying the world the first time you meet him, and Professor Sycamore was like, oh, it's fine.
It's all good. Here's a fun thing for me, because I don't like the story in the Pokemon games. I didn't play Pokemon as a child. I feel like this is something we've covered. I never did develop the attention span to follow Pokemon stories real great. X is my favorite because it's so bad, but it's like that's a little bit how I see storyline for kids RPGs anyway.
That's true,
so it's like, yeah.
It like goes above and beyond with how bad it is.
It's almost satirical to a point.
Right. What always gets me is that like there's they don't have the self-awareness to ever have made it actually satirical, and I'm like, that's the greatest sin of all.
I know that it's not, but that's how it reads to me, and it made it weirdly enjoyable for me.
Oh, I love X. I think X is so much fun.
I did like the gameplay in it.
Yes, I think the gameplay was very strong.
Which is what I play the games for.
I mean, it did the best thing for the series that it done, which is introduce Pokemon me, like that whole system, and the customization
also
stuff.
Really good.
Like, that's what the series had been needing for a long time.
Yeah.
And it was like, but fucking Lysandre is just like, who are you? Who the fuck are you? Are you dead? I don't even know. The fuck is this? But yeah, fucking,
And this.
Why did I kill a man? I'm
Sometimes
10 years old.
Sometimes as a 10-year-old, you've got to kill a man.
Do I?
That's the life lesson of Pokemon.
True.
This isn't a specific death that I'm going to talk about, but just generally, here's just a general complaint from me. Supernatural is really bad about bringing people back all the time.
Oh, God.
On my list of complaints about Supernatural, that's very low, but because it's on topic today, it bugs me. Because it's like, someone dies on that show, and it's... Assuming that you're someone who cares about the show in the first place, it's to the point now where someone dies and you, like, don't care.
It's like,
oh,
like
they're gonna be back. Which is a safe assumption. And it's getting kind of the same way with Grey's Anatomy, which is driving me crazy because it's a medical show.
It's a medical show.
So if someone dies, they should be dead.
Oh, no,
should
yeah,
not
like,
be back
they
on
keep
the show.
resuscitating people that should not be able to be resuscitated.
It's driving me crazy. I can't handle it.
God, yeah, bringing people back from the dead is, like, a hard thing to do, and it really has to be done well.
Yeah.
It's, like,
not all the time.
Right.
Because those are, like, extreme measures, final plan, absolute bottom of the barrel technique to do. So if you're, like, doing it all the time, it gets really...
Right. I mean, it's like I said with the Superman syndrome, I mean, it's like ever since the death of Superman, where they killed Superman... And then brought him back. You know, it's like, because it started that whole thing about if you're in a comic book, you basically can't die.
Yeah.
It's like, superheroes don't die. And it's like, so what the fuck is going
on? It is also, that being said, now that I've said never do that thing, I'm gonna cut back to an instance of where I really like it being done. I really like Rick and Morty's take on death.
Yeah.
Because it's a multiverse thing, and there's an episode in the first season, there's an episode really on in Rick and Morty, where Rick destroys the world beyond repair. Like, experiment goes wrong, everyone turns into a planet of Cronenbergs. It's like a body horror reality at that point. So he finds another timeline where he and Morty died in an experiment at about the same time, and he gets them there right after so that they can hide their bodies and continue living in that reality like nothing ever happened. And it's really dark. I really liked the episode because it was it's the first one where you really see just how dark the show is going to be at times. Because it ends with, like, this slow music while Rick and Morty are burying the corpses of themselves in the backyard. And it's like, first of all, and he makes a comment about it where it's like they only have 2 or 3 of those to use up in the entire run. Because it's a very self-aware show. Right. Like, they do a lot of wall breaking and stuff. But it's something that they come back to multiple times later on throughout the show where it's like, this is something that definitely happened. My corpse is rotting in the backyard right now. Yeah, I read that was in the first episode you showed me. Yeah, was where because like he said that and I was like, Jesus fucking, what the fuck? Yeah, there's an episode where that happens early on. That was a callback, but it's a really interesting way. Rick and Morty is a really good example of how if you're aware of tropes and decide to employ them anyway, it's good to kind of have a laugh at yourself about it. Right. It's a tongue-in-cheek sort of thing. But they do a lot of resurrection kind of shit on Rick and Morty that would bother me if it was any other show. I think it's one of those things where Rick and Morty's a comedy. Yeah. So, like, they can employ that more. If it's a drama and, like, you're supposed to take the death, like, really seriously, and then you negate it, like, it's one of those things that, like, Buffy's death was done really well when she came back. Which time? The second time. Okay. The musical. Oh, right. Time. Oh, God, yeah. War with Feeling was a really good way to deal with. Yeah, because it's like, because she was dead, and then she was alive again, so she was having to deal with the fact that she had been resurrected. Yeah. And didn't really want to be. Right. And, like, she didn't tell anyone. That was such a good arc, because everyone was everyone felt so bad. They thought that she had been in a hell dimension.
Right.
When they brought her back, it's one of the reasons why they went, like, above and beyond, employing everything at their disposal to try and bring her back from the dead, because she jumped into a hell dimension and they assumed she was there. And in Once More with Feeling, we kind of get to see that she had moved on and she was in heaven.
Right.
And it was, like, one of the reasons why being back was so hard for her.
Right.
And, like, why she wasn't grateful for the resurrection.
Right. Because she had moved on, but they hadn't, and now she had to go back, and I was like, oh.
It was a very mature take on the whole bringing a character back from the dead concept.
Right. So it's like, if you're going to do a bringing back from the dead concept, you need to be mature about it, and it should have an interesting take on it.
Yeah.
It can't just be meaningless. You can't kill a character off for shock factor and then bring them back, and everything is fine.
Yeah.
Because as it turns out, it's not fucking how it works.
That's not a good idea. So yeah, but Buffy was always kind of good about stuff like that.
Yeah.
I felt like it was a good show.
Buffy was good.
It was a good time.
So yeah.
So do you have any other for this one? Or?
No, I think that's about it.
I do have one final media thing to throw in here. Spoiler alert, minor spoiler alert, I guess, for New Girl. Just finally saw the final season. Winston's cat dies, and they have a memorial service a year after, which is a bizarre concept for a sitcom episode.
Right.
Just gonna throw it in there. But Winston has decided that his cat was probably Jewish, so they have a Jewish ceremony for this cat, which, again, really weird way to start an episode of a show.
Yeah, it's very specific.
But they had, especially because Winston's not Jewish, we don't know where this came from, and it's never explained. But we get to see in Jewish tradition, you unveil the headstone a year after the initial service, which is why we're having like this weird time delay. And as they unveil the tombstone, they have a picture of the cat, and then at the bottom the epitaph reads, "And now his watch has ended," which is one of the strangest Game of Thrones references I've ever seen in anything.
Jesus Christ,
and
that's just weird.
I don't think it's something that a lot of people probably caught onto, because it's like such a subtle, in the background kind of thing.
You're just like, you guys good? You good over there? What's happening?
Really interesting. Game of Thrones also brought a character back from the dead. Weirdly.
Yeah, it was weird. It was very weird.
That's also, I guess, since I brought up Game of Thrones again, I'm going to talk about that real fast. Because Beric Dondarrion is a really interesting example of that bringing a character back to life multiple times trope, where it's done well.
Yeah.
Because Beric Dondarrion has a priest in his service who has the ability to bring people back from the dead with the help of his god. But it's one of those things, you talk to Beric about it, they talk to Beric about it, and you get to see, and a little piece of him is left behind every time he comes back. And it's like a very gradual progression throughout the show, up until the point where we actually do lose him, where it's like, he's losing pieces of himself coming back from all of these deaths. And, like, but it was a really interesting thing, because it's kind of what the audience was going through, too. Like, the first time he comes back, it's, like, amazing and shocking, and it's like, that's crazy. And then the next time he comes back, we expect him to come back, and he expects himself to continually come back, even though it's happening at a price. And it's just really... Beric's a really interesting character. So, like, the second or third time you watch through Game of Thrones, you're like, the first time he comes back, I think most people didn't know who he was, so it wasn't a big deal.
That's me.
He's not all that important to the show, really.
But he's there.
He has resurrection powers. You would think he'd be, like, a big plot point.
No.
But he's not, really.
No, Jon Snow is here.
But he's interesting. It's also fun, because HBO released an in memoriam book for all of the characters who died in Game of Thrones, Which is interesting on its own, because that just shows you how much death there has to be in a show that the channel it's on releases an in memoriam book. But Beric Dondarrion was in there 4 times, and
Jesus
it
Christ.
just killed me. It was so good.
God. That's good, though. That's funny.
Really good. So, part 3.
So part 3. So it's... We're talking about how we deal with it, right?
Yeah,
that's
like
sort
in
of our
projects and
thing.
stuff.
I try to use death very sparingly. Like, I like happy endings. So, like, I'm not gonna kill off all my characters. Like, if I can help it, I usually don't try to kill anybody off.
Mm-hmm.
My belief is that if someone is truly evil, there are fates worse than death. So it's like, okay, don't die. It's fate worse than death. Dad, no!
Don't make me laugh while I'm coughing.
I'm sorry!
So good.
But, yeah, so I use death very sparingly. Like, I'll do it in backstories, like, if I am gonna use it, but I don't do a lot of, like, on-screen stuff. Because I am of the belief that it can sometimes be a cheap tactic, and it's like, I would rather find more interesting ways to develop the story. But I mean, like, if it's essential, then I'll do it. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not above killing people.
Nice.
In real life.
Whoa. Don't know
What about
how to
you?
follow that up. I kill off a lot
Everybody.
of people. That's a big thing that I do.
I have to tell you not to kill people off.
Yeah.
Consistently.
Alan's always, whenever I work on a collaboration with Alan, he's like, these people can't die. It's like, oh no. And it's like, it's a big thing that I have to work around where I don't kill people immediately.
And I like to do that.
I think it's something that comes from working in horror as much as I do.
Right.
Where it's like, I have that instinct where I want to kill characters. I can't help it. What's my thing? It's something... That being said, I do think I kill more people in fantasy, though, than I do in horror.
I mean, that's fair. There are more people to kill.
Yeah, there are more... And it's more of a... I feel like it's a bigger impact in fantasy when it's like a swift death.
Right.
Whereas in horror, it really is more of a slow burn.
Mm-hmm.
So...
There's a build-up and suspense to the death in horror.
That being said, the thing I'm working on now, I just, like, am killing people left and right, and it's a horror thing.
Jesus Christ,
so that's completely inaccurate. I am, like, immediately kill 90% of the world's population. Working on a super plague thing.
Nice,
fun.
dude.
Everyone dies.
No! That was another one of your stories I had to tell you not to kill everybody in.
Yeah.
As it turns out.
That's true. A lot of people die anyway, though.
I mean, that's true. That's fair.
Because it's a super plague.
It's gotta happen.
How that whole concept works. That is... Also, I can talk about it now. For my projects, I also have a story where Death is the narrator. We were talking about this a little bit earlier in the year for the podcast for romance, because I submitted it to an erotica anthology, and I made it past the first round of like consideration for it because they really liked it, but it was by the time they had eliminated like the first group of things. Mine was the only one even remotely that dark, and they're like, we cannot put this in here. But I was surprised they considered it, because it was, for a romance story, was very dark.
Yeah, you, again, killed off the majority of the population.
It was a plague.
Sometimes the plague.
Plagues have to kill a bunch of people, but it was fun.
That's why it's a plague.
Because I got to do I feel a little bit more comfortable talking about it. I'm not going to get in trouble because I'm not in the anthology.
That's true.
I can talk about whatever I want. I got invited to submit to an anthology earlier this year that was doing erotic stories inspired by the works of Edgar Allan Poe.
It's so very specific. I think it's so...
For anyone who doesn't know, this is the year that Edgar Allan Poe's work goes into the public domain, officially.
Oh, I didn't know that!
So there are a lot of places doing Poe-inspired anthologies right now. And I got invited to submit to the romance one instead of, like, any of the updated horror ones happening.
Can't do that.
But it was interesting. I did Mask of the Red Death, and Death was my narrator, and it was good. It was a good, wholesome family erotica story.
Do you listen to yourself when you talk?
I think we're done with the podcast.
That's the note we're ending it on. Nothing else, ever. Oh my god, Kat.
No, but I did finally get a rejection letter for that. I've been waiting, pretty much since I submitted.
You were like, I'm just waiting for my rejection in the mail.
The quickest rejection I ever get.
And it wasn't.
It was not.
Jesus Christ.
I did get one eventually. I felt really bad for the woman who sent it to me, though, because she was so nice.
Aww.
And, like, you could tell she didn't want to be sending it. And I felt so bad, and it's like, I know what I did. It's okay.
I understand.
I was in the wrong in this scenario. Even though I wasn't, they should not have invited me. They knew what I was gonna do.
Yeah,
like, they had to know.
Have they read your writing?
But it was fun, because I got to do Death as the narrator.
Right.
For an erotic piece.
I have a personification of Death that I use. We love Reaper. He's great. I've edited him a little bit, since his initial phase is, it's one of those things where it's like they speak in the old tongues, like they never bothered to learn fucking English.
Right.
Because they're like, I don't have time for that. I got shit to do. But basically it's like, they spent so much time doing their job and not passing it off to anybody that it's basically driven them mad. So they can only talk in, like, abstract symbols and the old tongues. So it's like, I love him. Because they're absolutely out of it, but, like, they're adorable also.
Yes, Reaper's adorable.
We love Reaper.
We do. Good.
Love them. They're very good. They just sort of appear randomly places and just, like, hang out for a little bit.
Yeah. And
then we leave. And then people are dead.
That's how it works sometimes.
That's how it works. Well, it's like, because you wrote that whole story for the one print we had with Reaper. And it was like, that was a really fun thing we did with Death. With, having like a peaceful, chaotic limbo, where basically you just were there until your next body was ready.
Yeah.
And it was good.
It was a fun thing to do. I got to write in the second person perspective, which is something I don't do a lot.
Right.
I did a lot while we were working with Prince. I don't know why. I haven't done a lot of it since.
Time to start again.
It's a fun, interesting way to go about things.
For your next Edgar Allan Poe erotica.
My next Edgar Allan Poe erotica. Also rejected, actually. I've already done that.
Wow! I didn't even know about that one.
Yeah. I found out about it pretty shortly after. I didn't have a lot of time to submit something. It was weird.
Was it the Telltale Heart?
It was not. It's Cask of Amontillado.
What did
it was a 21st century update for Cask of Amontillado. It was about a game developer. Real dark. Real weird. Max would be proud of me.
Well, that's all you can ask, is for Max to be proud of me.
The anthology was horrified.
Well, that's fair.
Because that was not what they were...
That's not what they were
looking for. I'm bad at submissions.
Sometimes that's life. I'm bad at doing art.
It's hard to do things sometimes.
I don't like to do things. I'm just gonna cry about character deaths instead.
So yeah, those are some of the deaths that I've done.
Death can be fun to work with.
Yeah.
I think it's fun to do, like, an interesting take on it, or, like, really make it mean something. That's the only time I really like to do it. I'm like, it needs to have, like, a purpose. to it. Otherwise, I'm like, I can do, like, other things with this. Like, people will be alive and suffer. Or they'll smooch. Who knows which of the two it will be.
That's good. That's a good life thing.
That's my
They'll
philosophy
suffer or
in
smooch. Good.
Jesus. Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
Do you have any other?
I'm trying to, because it really is something that I do work with all the time. I have more than one personification of death. I've been thinking about the erotica one because I like just
did it.
heard about, because I just got my rejection letter like over this last week.
Jesus Christ, it's so long.
They thought about using it. I don't know why. Because it was bad. No, but it's something that it's a concept that I've been toying with for a really long time because I think there's just a lot of really interesting stuff there. I actually at one point did a story based off of the Say Anything song I was talking about earlier,
Hey!
but I didn't finish it.
Oh.
I should maybe do that at some point because I was having a lot of fun with it.
You should do it.
It's good.
And you should just put that song on loop.
Yeah. That'll be my whole playlist.
10 hours music to study to death for my birthday.
My birthday.
24/7 loop. Study music.
Good.
Euro beats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I can't really,
Yeah, I can't think of
anything. I have a sad quote.
The fuck, man. You're opening the book.
Yeah, I'm gonna read everyone a sad quote. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
This is good. It is a curious thing, the death of a loved one. We all know that our time in this world is limited, and eventually all of us will end up underneath some sheet, never to wake up. And yet it is always a surprise when it happens to someone we know. It's like walking up the stairs to your bedroom in the dark and thinking there's one more stair than there is. Your foot falls down through the air, and there's a sickly moment of dark surprise as you try and readjust the way you thought of things. Lemony Snicket.
Fucking Lemony Snicket.
It's good.
Jesus Christ. Thanks for making things sad, Kat.
Yeah. Lemony Snicket made things sad.
You made things
I'm just sharing.
I'm just sharing the sadness. We gotta end the podcast.
Okay.
We've been talking a long time.
Yeah, we really
Turns
have
out.
it was a good topic. There were like a lot of things to cover.
And I mean, we're gonna come back to it also because
eventually I'd like to do a history version of the same podcast where we talk about death, but we talk about the evolution of its portrayal.
Right, because as it turns out,
there's a reason why we focus on death so much, and we didn't talk about that today. We will talk about it someday.
But right now,
my history podcast.
I think we've talked the podcast to death.
Yeah.
So, it's fun.
Yeah, we're done.
Okay, we're leaving now.
Yeah. Do you wanna do an outro?
Oh, you remember the
I
outro?
remember
I'm
the
so
outro
proud
this
of you.
No.
This has been Unsolicited Advice. I'm Bubblegum.
I'm Toxic.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.